Okay, so Steve, what do you think you'll personally be bringing to drumhead?
Well, I think it's going to be a collaboration. I mean, we've all got our skills, we've all got our areas of drumming that we're particularly keen on and have our experiences with. I'm hoping that to share some of the technical exercises that I've written and gleaned over the years, and some of the material from my book that came out earlier this year. But really, it's inspiration and positivity, and somewhere online that drummers really look forward to going to be part of. That's what I think is going to be really exciting about becoming part of drumhead.
That's great. That's great. And just as a bit of a general one from me, how do you kind of see the drumming world at present? It's a massive question, but
it's really it's quite interesting. And I don't get sort of too much obsessed about looking back. I'm very pleased with where I am, but there's no doubt that things have changed, and it is harder and harder to sort of say I want to be in a band and I want to make money doing that. That has become very hard to do. I think for any young musician now, your expectations have to start with loving the instrument. You've got to kind of feel that passion and not feel too disappointed or get too upset if the thing about enjoying your instrument and making money is hard to do. There are a lot of incredibly great drummers that are not able to put money in their pocket by just playing. So I think it's a time to look at versatility, to diversify a little bit, to have other skills. The technological skills are the obvious one, being able to know your way around a desk and computer technology, all that kind of stuff that's very important to with music. But I think that younger musicians they don't know any different. So I have tremendous faith in younger musicians. So they're coming into an industry that notoriously can be quite volatile, as we all know, but that's never changed. So that's a constant. And I think that if we can supply and give younger musicians and any musician encouragement, support, opening them up to some of the influences that we've had, and we assume that everybody's heard of Louis Bellson. We assume that everybody's and they haven't. Fantastic drummers. So education, inspiration, and an enthusiasm. That's what I'm hoping that we can push forward.
I think that's an interesting point because when I'm talking to young drummers coming through, you want to give them the truth, but you don't want to dampen the enthusiasm. They've got to know what the challenges out there.
Yeah.
But when I first started out, and we first started out with Embrace, my band, it was just kind of we just said we're the best band in the world, and that's it. We believe it.
Yeah.
And I think young drummers have still got to believe that they can just do what they want to do. But you've just got to give them a bit of a heads up if you can, because that might help them, especially when you're talking about diversifying. For me, that's what's helped me over the years, doing different things. Great words.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, Steve. I mean, I still do a thing now where if we're working on something, I'll say this is something that XYZ drummer uses. As part of your practice this week, get on YouTube and look up that name. And find out everything that you can, and that could be a newer drummer like a Mark Juliana. It could be a Bobby Rich. It could be a Steve Gadd. It could be absolutely anybody.
Yeah,
and then they'll hear that sort of style that they've been working on. When they're playing in that guy that they're looking at, and I think the inspiration, and we have to kind of know where the instrument came from to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think together, I think we can probably put that message across. I think that's a huge thing that we need to do.
I think as well that anybody that gets involved with music, and especially drumming, that should always retain a sense of fun about it. I mean, drumming is such a positive thing. If you look at the way that drums are revered in other cultures, in Latin American cultures and African cultures, the original, where the original rhythms came from. They're part of the celebration of life. That they bring so much positivity, and I do still I do still love that aspect about drumming. I do try to deter notions of competition, and you know that it's some sort of like elite sport. I want to sort of dispel that and just kind of encourage you know the joys of just getting up and playing with other musicians as well, you know, and that I think is a really important thing to do for younger players, to just encourage that sense of enjoyment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always say that it's got to be about enjoyment. For me, if you're enjoying something, you'll practice it and you'll learn.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
if you're not enjoying it, you won't, and it'll just get worse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hopefully between us, we're going to appeal to drummers that have just picked up the sticks through to drummers that are, you know, far down their journey. So, from that point of view, as a drummer that's just picked up his sticks, what would you say the most important first steps are in drumming?
I think for me personally, it's getting some kind of structure and knowledge of the basic rudiments. It's anything that you can do to formulate some kind of technique by repetition in the very early stages is going to hold you in good stead as you become a better player. You know, finding the time and the commitment to dedicate something every day to your endeavors to get better is you know is going to see progress, and it is hard because when I first started playing, you know, there were so little distractions around. You know, there really weren't.
Yeah.
So the fact that I had a practice pad and sticks and an old metronome, I was able to kind of put that time in and structure that time and find the time, a bit like cleaning my teeth. You know, you just don't think about it, you just do it. And I think for any younger player, being prepared to find the time to commit, and looking at the basics, you know, looking at your single strokes and your double strokes and developing those into the vocabulary of drumming, you know, paradiddles and inversions and compound stickings, they all come from the same thing. So the more you know, the more that you've worked on those basics, the more that you're going to have to say on the instrument.
Yeah, wise words. Very good.
Yeah. Hey, are these the things that you still work on? Do you still go back to the basics and work on singles and doubles and things?
All the time, because you know, now for me, I have a very kind of clear idea about things that I enjoy working on, that actually make sure that when I go and sit in with a band, you know, or working with Hagen White or the rare sessions. There's not been a lot of sessions this year, to be honest, because we all know why. But that my technique is actually in a shape to make sure that I can play songs really well. So I have to say, I don't really spend a lot of time practicing some of the more way out kind of techniques of and beat displacements and metric modulations. I understand them and can appreciate it, but for my mindset, you know, it's about consistency. It's being able to play with a click track very comfortably. That's always been my sort of my aim and goal. And I mean, I think, you know, I'm quite up on. I've had a few re-releases this year of older stuff, and I mean now, you know, in terms of recorded tracks, you know, I'm up into the 800, I think now, sort of. You know, with from Paul Weller to John Martin to Dr. John to you know, to the Jazz Renegades to Hagen White, you know, and I've always felt I've always put a lot of stock into that. So a lot of the things that I practice are technique that, you know, things like subdivision, being very accurate, being able to subdivide notes. An example being Changing Man, which is, you know, a very solid quarter note groove on the hi-hat, but then a very precise 30-second note roll that became kind of synonymous with the song. All of those kind of things are a kind of a mindset and a skill. And I was watching that thing that you were doing, Rich, with your triplets at 150 BPM thing, which is fantastic, you know, and that kind of thing. I find that's what I kind of do every day, subdividing, pushing the metronome up, creating little goals for myself, you know, because it's all got to have a purpose. Because the one thing I especially with the students that I teach is not to keep practicing the same things, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, yes, I don't cover every piece of possible ground that you can as a drummer, but what I do is practice things that I know are going to stand me in good stead when the red light goes on, because that's the thing I really love doing even now.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. I mean, I think that, you know, listening, if I was to listen to a piece of music and I had no idea who was playing on it, I would be able to find your playing in it. Yeah.
Well,
you have that sound. I think most people want to spend their entire career trying to find their sound.
Yeah.
And I think you found your sound many, many years ago. And I think you nailed that. And you can almost listen to it and go, I bet Steve played on that.
Yeah, and that having a voice is all I ever wanted, as you know, because it's a really interesting thing. I mean, when you look at the way a certain era of drumming developed in this country, we in America there was a much more a tradition that at a very young age you would get exposed to marching drums and Charlie Wilcoxon and that have that sort of discipline that led you on to the desire to go to Berklee School of Music or something like that. And that's quite a for a lot of drummers in America, that's the path that they trod. But in the UK, we were only ever getting kind of scraps off the table in terms of that education. We were definitely behind, but that doesn't mean to say that we didn't have the talent. But having spoken during the documentary to Ian Pace, especially, he summed it up absolutely brilliantly. He said that we took what little we could get and we worked it out ourselves. There wasn't. We tried to work it out ourselves. And he said that, you know, and this is what I think is so wonderful about the way American drumming has developed and the way that British drumming has developed, because when you actually think about that and this idea of ingenuity and being left to your own devices and someone not necessarily pushing you to practice something, a rigid regime, but still having that enthusiasm. What happened to the British drummers is that we got Mitch, we got Ginger, we got Bonham, we got Kenny Jones, we got Cozy Powell, we got Ringo, we got Mooney. These drummers that you can mention just their first name or their second name, and we know exactly who we're talking about.
And they have their own styles. Their styles
absolutely
are instantly recognizable. Pace, Bonham, even though they're both rock drummers, you can just the black and white, it's amazing.
And I think that's really, really interesting. So, I'm very proud to kind of come from that legacy of influence of great, great being influenced by great British drummers like Ginger Baker. And I do think it's a very different experience and a very different thing to growing up in America. Maybe things are a little more level playing field because we have access to so much more now. You can get on YouTube but what I find is a little bit of a pitfall for younger drummers is that they end up younger people in general is, I think that there's a good expression in the North of being overfaced. You've got too much dinner on your plate and you get overfaced, and I think that happens to drummers, and to musicians, is that there's so much out there. There's so many things telling you, you've got to do this, and then you've got to be able to do this, and you've got to do this, and look at this, and look at that. And I've seen drummers that spend more time going from clips of super fast chops than practicing themselves. So and you're never going to get that voice if you don't put the hours in. So there's a good side and there's a downside to exposure to so much information, and it's just helping drummers find a balance.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, Stephen. It's the same with music. For me, with the band side of things, there's the amount of music. You've got Spotify, you've got I mean, there's just so much. I mean, you can't listen to. Back in the day, you used to buy your album,
have your records,
and you'd play it to death because it cost you whatever, and you couldn't afford another. But now the choice is out there, and like you say, for my son who's a drummer as well, who's just sort of entering into the journey that Rich is teaching actually, and looking online, it's just like you say, they spend all the time just watching all these thousands of different, and there are thousands of amazing drummers out there, rather than actually, spending the time doing the work to get to that stage. Sometimes, it's definitely a balance.
I mean, I've definitely seen and come across drummers whose technique is absolutely astonishing, but you put a click track on and say, can you just play like a 80 BPM and just play 8th notes and 16th notes, and they struggle, and that's our job to help them out with that, and this is why I love the some of the loops and the loops that you sent, Mike, for me to listen to, because it at least encourages you to sit back and say, play something with a shuffle feel, play something with a 12/8 feel, because if you're a musician, people, I think that what we have seen with drumming is that drumming has kind of gone off on its own sort of little motorway, which is, and that's fine, because there are people that go by the name of professional YouTuber. There are drummers that YouTube sensation, and I'm not knocking that, but it's a new phenomenon, that there is a kind of you don't necessarily have to be in a band to make an impact. I'm not saying a living, but an impact on the drum scene, and there's some astonishingly good drummers out there that you could say, well, but what have they played on? They haven't played. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. It is a thing. But as you will know, Mike, is that what a lead singer or a writer, a songwriter wants from a drummer is very, very different from what a group of drummers want from a drummer.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's polemically different, being able to just play good time and not overplay, and and ask about what the lyrics are about, what's that song about, what's your emotion to play that song, and I think that in this kind of divergence where it's become about the drums, what we've lost a little bit touch with is the unbelievable skill that it takes to be not only a drummer but a musician.
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, I struggled, when because when Embrace first started out, we did all this sort of gothy, fast stuff, arms everywhere, and then we rediscovered ourselves and honed it down to this sort of more of a slower sort of heartfelt sort of ballad thing, and just simplified the drums down to those little dum cat, dum dum cat. And it drove me nuts at first in the studio, because I was like, this isn't fun. I'm not. But then after a while, I learned to love the feel of just playing simply, and also just getting used to the metronome. It's a lesson that we just shot last week with Rich about learning to love the metronome. For me, I use it a lot nowadays because we use a lot of extra bits and pieces, and for me, it's great. I don't have to worry about what tempo the song is.
It's not going to change.
It's not going to change.
It's so important. And also, something I went to see one of my favorite drummers, Steve Smith, last year in Manchester when we were allowed out, and he was talking about like the different aspects of technique that when he's playing with Journey, and any of us that have had the fortune to play in big arenas and big tours with a lot of people, that sat there kind of going. That doesn't get heard. It's especially if the sound engineer, you're in the hands of another person, the engineer, and drummers don't. Sometimes you go, oh, I never thought about that. Do you know that there might be a gate on the snare drum, and all that kind of stuff you're doing is just not getting heard. So that, those are kind of things that you only find out by playing music and opening your eyes and ears up further than just playing the drums.
Yeah, no, completely. It's what I've said before numerous times when we were working on a couple of albums with Youth, and he used to say to me, you guys, you should be in stadiums. So when you're doing your fills should be down, da 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 dum. Because that's because people who aren't drummers aren't going to give a monkeys about any really fast fills, but they're going to feel that in their chest when you go around the toms.
Absolutely.
So think about that. So.
I say this to students all the time, that we're talking about maybe creating a solo and how it's got to have a hook or a melody in it of some description. And I'll say to the general public, if you play a drum solo, that means that they either need to go to the bar or the toilet.
Yeah, yeah.
Because only the drummer is going to stay and watch the drum solo, because everybody else has got, I've been desperate for a while, I'll go now. Yeah. And unless you can grab them, and you're not going to do that by playing 30-second 64th notes and loads of double pedal stuff, you're going to do it by creating space and making a hook that grabs them, that they can keep hold of, like a song.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you can do that, then you may as well not play the solo, because it's just a massive ego boost for yourself.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, if you don't get that right, it can be literally a low point of an evening at a concert. I mean, and even drummers like Buddy would do one big feature, a night in their set, which was maybe 8-9 minutes long, incredible. But I used to go to see Buddy Rich and Louis Belson, and they were playing the arrangements, they were playing songs and featuring the other soloists. They weren't just wailing away, all night. And I think somebody said that, if you from the an average concert, which is around, say, 2 hours, if you took a drum solo out, it's still going to be 1 hour and 53 of music. And I was very, very lucky, because I am one of the sort of very few drummers that on a pop gig, essentially, I was able to do a drum solo, and I pretty soon realized that you had to keep some kind of structure. You had to tell a story with it, because otherwise you just lose interest from the other musicians as well. And that's really bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of the things that, like I said in my introduction, I saw you play a lot with Paul back in the sort of 90s, and that's what I noticed that when you did your solo. Obviously, I'm watching it because I'm a drummer, but I actually did notice you look round, and it wasn't that sort of mass exodus. It was people sort of enjoying it, and that's because you did what you did, and you knew, you thought about what you had to do, and it certainly worked. Well, it worked for me anyway.
Yeah. Telling a story.
I mean, and again, I think, Steve, you've mentioned about you're kind of playing for the song and things. I personally think that your playing has changed over the years as well. I remember way before I knew you, seeing you in clinic when I was, I don't know, this big, and you're playing like left foot cowbells and things, and all this business. And now, if you, I think the last clinic I saw you in Manchester, maybe, I don't know when it was, last year before, whenever it was. And you just played some groove to some tracks that you chopped up.
Yeah.
It's a drummer's job. There was no left foot cowbells and all that business going on. Yeah.
No,
so
I think
your play's changed. Is that an age thing?
I think it's an age thing. I think it was like quite a lot of years of doing martial arts, because my left knee is not what it used to be. But I can still do it, but I don't. I think that kind of thing has been superseded by there's so many drummers that are doing that kind of thing ridiculously well, that it's more about doing what you do. And I'm trying to be a bit more honest about, I love all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, I think people know you for what you're famed for. And if I'm going to talk about kind of technique and things like that, it's got to be relevant to the music that I play, and that's what I try to do. I mean, the clinic thing, I mean, that's even changed now. It's hard to get people to come to drum clinics these days, because of the online thing. So I think as I've got older, I've sort of worried less about the hired gun type thing, the gunslinger sort of, the drum slinger sort of thing, and because and try to sort of make things a little more about music. And I think one of the drummers that I listen to as well has changed. I mean, I listen to so much more jazz than I have forever, especially this past 9 months, and I've been spending a lot of time working on ride cymbal and touch and listening to different drummers. And one of the I've come to appreciate a drummer called Ed Thigpen, who played with the Oscar Peterson Trio. And for any of you drummers that want to know about timekeeping, the Oscar Peterson Trio with Oscar on piano and Ray Brown on bass and Ed Thigpen on drums, man, it's so tight. It's just incredible. And he doesn't really, as they say, well, he doesn't really do a lot, but what he is doing is absolutely sensational, and it's about touch, and you know, that kind of drumming really appeals to me now. And I don't know if you guys have found it. It sort of goes through phases, but you know, now I get a lot of younger drummers asking about the roots of, you know, can you teach me about like James Brown's drummers, and can you teach me about you know, New Orleans music and stuff like that, which is really great. So I suppose that there's so many drummers offering different kind of specializations that, you know, you're not going to come to me for double pedals, and you know, you'll go to an expert. But if you want to know a bit about the roots of music and where it all came from, and you know, sort of the influence of drummers like Al Jackson and Jabo Starks, people like that, then I'm probably the right person to sort of be talking to.
Absolutely, and the great thing, I think, having you involved with Drumhead is that between the three of us, we cover a lot of different areas. Yeah, and I think that's what's exciting for me, the fact that we can pretty much cover everything, really. Hopefully everything that a drummer would want to need to learn. So so I mean, some really great words there, great interview. You can see from that what Steve's going to bring to Drumhead. And we are just so excited to have him on board.
Well, maybe we could do some at some point. A little drum hang might be nice, and you know, if we can get some questions in from our friends out there, and get a cup of tea and have another chat very soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Definitely, that's brilliant.
Great stuff.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Take care, guys.
Cheers, then. See you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.